I grew up in Manenberg, a community on the flats. Manenberg is essentially a community stigmatized by gangs and drugs and prostitution. And it's always been portrayed that way. It is a highly condensed community. The dropout rate for kids out of school is 80%. My mom worked in a clothing factory. So my mom was an ironer, and my mom and dad never were married, and so my dad was never a part of my life. Like a lot of young boys, dropped out of school in grade 7 because I followed friends. My friends at the time joined gangs because they started using heavy drugs. I ran away from home, then got in trouble with the law. Then the judge was really graceful. I was supposed to get a 3-year prison sentence, and he suspended it, saying that he saw much more in me than sending me to prison. Part of my sentence was to join a community organization in a community that worked with young people, and then I got a job as a toilet cleaner, and so that's where my official work started. I was 15 and a half years old, I can still remember, because my mom needed to come and sign for me to work. Questions there, and then I want to talk about. In that time, I became a Christian and joined a church in Manenberg. And when I lost my job, I just started hanging out with a friend of mine at the church because he had a kids club thing happening at the church. While I was there, just in that small road, there was about 20 young people that just hanged out in the street doing nothing. And I had keys to the church, so I could open the church whenever I wanted to. And so I turned that into a space where we could meet and just hang out with kids. I earned an average of about 200 Rand a month for that 3 years. But I loved it because I could enjoy working with young people, and I could identify these young people to where I sort of came from. And then I got a job at an organization called Self Help Manenberg to design a program for youth at risk that has dropped out of school, that can be diverted back in. And so suddenly I sat with a program that I could look back at my life and say, what's the mistakes that I've made? And can I identify that with young people and design a program to help them? But that still didn't satisfy my needs, because still then there was this gap of young people that just don't want to go back to school. They're in a gang and they're on drugs and they're in prison, and no one's really dealing with that part of the community. It's those forgotten part of the community that's being exploited by gangs. It's being exploited by drug lords and stuff. You can't talk about a second chance to someone that didn't have a first chance in life as well. So me and the guy that started Fusion met up once and realized that both of us had the same heart. Presently, the warehouse offers financial stability, they offer infrastructure, and they offer governance. We wanted to buy a house that would be partly residential for young people that needed to be removed from where they were, and partly a space where we would have a base for the project. We went on a fundraising trip in England, and one person gave £60,000. We got the house in mind, let's just pursue this. But because there's governance structures in place, we realized that the person that we were going to buy the house from were going to rip us off. And if the Board of Trustees, through the governance process that they took, didn't ask us that questions, we wouldn't have made good decisions around spending the money. Our challenges with raising our funding is that no one wants to give to a program that works with criminals. If a funder comes to you, they want to see that 20 young people has gone through the program within the next 6 months, and they've learned the skill so that they can put that on their books. With working with these type of young people, you probably get fruit after the second year with them. They often choose to go back to the gang because change doesn't always feel safe. So I've got a team of 70% self-sustaining volunteers. They're out there building relationships with individuals, building relationships with young people, relationships with that adds value, and to a point where then the person that they mentor starts a mentoring relationship. So ultimately, all that we want to see happen is what I'm doing is replicated as well. The biggest insecurity for me is that my team, I dropped at school in grade 7, which is essentially middle school, and 2 of my team members has degrees in some. And so essentially they, in the education world, they outweigh me outrageously. And so bringing the academics and the experience together, it brings a rich flavor to the team. So there's a young man that I met on the streets while walking. His name is Kevin. He was on the verge of joining a gang because his stepdad was a drug addict and part of the American gang. His mom is an alcoholic. He joined a disciples program with us. It's like, the best thing we can do for you is to get you back into school. He's 19 years old, back in grade 9. It is a big challenge for him because he hasn't been to school in 4 years. If he's willing to fight and make this education thing work, then I'm willing to make life a bit easier for him. And so he moved in with us. To see a young man make something of his life when there was no hope for him, that for me is success. Every day, often I want to give up. Every day, I often think, I'm wasting my time. But then I meet with a young man and he's part of a gang, and then he cries just because I use the word love. Or he calls me Puta because he thinks he associates me with as being his big brother. Or like Kevin thinks that I'm his dad. These are the things that keeps on pushing me back into this community. My dream that in 10 years' time, Manenberg could be a vibrant community where young people add value to their community, where young people are actively involved in shaping others' lives, and where the stigma of a community that was infested with drugs and gangs is totally erased.